Hello everyone, this is Jaren Jove with my podcast Overanalyzing Games, in which I talk about games that I've played and analyze them. Today, for this episode, I wanted to talk about why the main plot of the worst game ever, Chrono Cross, is a colossal failure. Many of you may have the audacity to think that while the characters and subplots of Chrono Cross that I've highlighted make very little sense, the overarching plot remains untouchable and impeccable. Today, I'm going to cheerfully destroy that belief with this analysis. Chrono Cross's main plot is a pile of plot holes that involve self-contradictions and lead to just plain stupid writing. The clearest of these massive failures in the plot is Fate, one of the most central antagonists to this story. The focal problem with this antagonist is that literally none of its actions make any sense whatsoever from the explanation that we're given about its purpose and objective. The first problem begins with its creator, Balthazar, and completely refutes the plot by the very premise of Balthazar's background influence on why he made Fate to predict the future. Balthazar predicted the Time Devourer would eat the world by 2300 AD. But that's impossible. Fate is a supercomputer set with clairvoyance, that is, the power to see the future, and is the only one capable of actually doing that. Yet Balthazar's prediction is the reason why he creates Fate, despite the fact that Balthazar can't see the future, and only Fate has the power to. So how does that logically follow? The only conclusion is that it's a stupid self-contradiction. The plot can't have happened because Balthazar predicted an event that only Fate had the power to. It only gets worse from there. Balthazar makes the time crash happen, and Fate considers that an accident. Except it isn't, and Fate, being able to predict the future, should have known that Balthazar would do that. This specific plot hole, honestly, could have easily been fixed by Balthazar simply ordering Fate to do the time crash. But no. Sadokado is an idiot, and he doesn't know how to make a consistent logical story. It only collapses from therein. Fate, who can predict the future by seeing every conceivable possibility, decides to create the El Nido archipelago in order to prevent a time paradox by avoiding anyone detecting it. And this eventually leads to Surge's father and Surge's father's friend, both of whom are just some random farming villagers, to discover Chronopolis. And we know this is accidental, because Fate wanted to correct the dimensional split that caused Homeworld to suffer the future of Lavos when Surge drowned in another world. We see this in Homeworld, in the part where Surge, in Lynx's body, goes to Chronopolis, and Fate tries to kill him. This is after he defeats his father's ghost friend, who frankly doesn't really make sense either. But moving right along. In another world, its plan was to have Lynx, Fate's biological interface, switch bodies with Surge so that Fate could use Surge's DNA to access a room inside Chronopolis. Now here's the important part. Fate completely succeeded in this objective in the early portion of the game, and from then on, not only does Fate just let Surge go, but this massive supercomputer, capable of seeing the future, and who did everything to keep its identity a secret by building the archipelago, decides to cause wars and commit random acts of violence while Surge builds an army to wipe Fate out. For most of the plot from then on, Dark Surge appears to give random diatribes of Surge's part not being finished, except that Surge's part absolutely was finished. All Fate needed to do was use Surge's body to open a door at any point in time during the second half of the game. This supercomputer, this being that can predict all possible futures, didn't do anything to stop Surge, and just did pointless, villainous acts to make itself look evil instead of committing to its objective, which was to open a door. If the point was to actually free Shala, then it wouldn't have taken Surge's body at all, and there wouldn't have been an extra ending with Fate actually achieving the objective. In fact, Fate's very existence would be pointless, because it exists to stop the destruction. And to top it all off, Fate never saw any of this coming, despite being able to literally see the future. Fate had everything won, and all it had to do was enter a room. But didn't, because feelings. This is not even mentioning the utter pointlessness of burning down Kid's orphanage for no discernible reason. Nothing about Fate's background explanation fits as a motive for how the character behaves. Its antagonistic nature towards Kid didn't make sense, and its supposed foreshadowing of Surge's purpose, despite the fact that, according to the plot itself, it already achieved its objective, and is therefore doing nothing but destroying its own objective, but not simply heading to Chronopolis to open one door. That's all that needed to be done, and Fate didn't do that. Now to move on to the ending. The ending is an abysmal failure, and proof that Chrono Cross is the worst game ever made by a total trash writer, Masato Kato. Kid and Shala unite, but you never really get Kid's thoughts and feelings on the matter. Supposed building up to this twist is ruined by Kid's one-liner denial as the only response to her learning her true purpose before the fusion happens. Now, no real character growth is given before the ending for Kid. Masato Kato apparently argued it's a meeting of a boy and a girl story, but that falls flat when Balthazar orchestrates the entire scenario, and Shala's motives don't even make sense since she saves someone who reminds her of her brother instead of her actual brother. So, it can't really be a boy meets girl story if the initial interest was because she was reminded of her brother. Since all the timelines converge and become a consistent timeline, where Lavos never existed, how is Kid able to travel across dimensions of different timelines that shouldn't exist according to the plot? And why does El Nido Archipelago even exist when its very existence was made by Fate to prevent its own discovery and to fight Lavos, to prevent Lavos from destroying the world? Perhaps, just maybe, because Masato Kato is a trash writer and Chrono Cross is the worst game ever. Dear viewers, thank you for listening to this podcast. If you would like to, please like, share, comment, and subscribe if you like my content. If you feel I deserve it, please consider supporting me through Patreon. If you have questions, tweet me at JarinJove or email me at JoveJarin@hotmail.com. Thank you for listening.